outstanding and world-class. Full of outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's Education Tonight. It's the 3rd of October. We've survived September. Woo!
Just about. The lurgy has got me already.
It's quite funny, isn't it? You just see that kind of just that drop off in attendance that kind of hits around this team. You've already been hit.
I've been hit now, so I've got the voice of the late Christopherson, God rest his soul, or Rubber Ducky. You know, ever hear of a rubber ducky that couldn't swim? Christopherson. Come, big convoy. And so I'm now got the voice of a country and western singer, which is great. You know.
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah. But hopefully Brent can hold his voice for tonight. And we've got a really good show for you tonight because we are, well, I guess it's good news in one respect, is that we are finally getting a curriculum review, something we've been banging on about for a while, Brent. You know, that we've said our curriculum's been out of date. Maybe this is the source of attendance problems, this is the source of kind of motivation issues within the teaching staff. We're teaching curriculum that is not fit for purpose. So that's part of our discussion tonight. And our second story after half past is we're going to be looking at this crisis that's coming up with teaching assistants. We've all been in that position. Hopefully we've had great teaching assistants. I don't think teaching would be the same or could happen even without our army of teaching assistants that really do support the teaching of people with sometimes quite serious and complicated needs in our education system. So we'll be covering that because I think it's definitely deserving of a kind of a shout out.
I think depleted army is definitely the sort of the statement, isn't it? Much like the mirroring the recruitment and retention crisis in teaching itself, there's a parallel recruitment and retention crisis in teaching assistants, and I think they are inextricably linked. And there is obviously a knock-on effect for teaching assistants with a lack of teachers, and equally there's a paying conditions issue, and that's obviously now biting in. And then there's a triple whammy, which is the increase in SEND demand. So it's this squeeze of increase in demand, reduction of supply, and more demanding parents. And yet we have a kind of rearguard action, to use your analogy of an army, the rearguard action fought by the remaining teaching assistants who are, I think, basically undervalued financially. And even sometimes in some schools, they aren't, I think, given enough credit for the job that they do. So
we'll hit that after 8:30. So we split the kind of show in half. So now you know kind of what's coming up. Please feel free to kind of comment in. I see a mug. I see a mug. I see a mug. Tom, where's my mug? He's using my cupboard. The other one's dirty in the sink. That's my mug. Anyway, shall we just say a quick hello to the partners of the show? We've got a big hello to John Katz. Hi, John.
Hi, John. We've got the matching t-shirts.
We've got the t-shirts, yep. This show is brought to you in partnership with John Katz Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore a full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. And we're also pleased to be supported by Reading Solutions UK, which is the home of Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development program. Create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond. GCSE using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a professional learning pathway built to accelerate their strengths and improve on areas for development. You can try the program with a free 4-week trial today, or 3-week pilot, sorry. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request their the pilot from there. Thank you very much for the support that those groups kind of give, those companies give us. Obviously, they're great, and obviously they enhance your professional development and also support students. So I was scrolling through the internet.
Well, actually, you forgot one important group of people as well that might be out there. There are the potential future hive mind Teacher Talk Radio hosts.
Oh, yes, of course.
So if you are interested and you've got lots of opinions, teachers with opinions, who knew? And you fancy doing some CPD, because doing this is actually a little bit of CPD.
That's
it's
true.
good
That's
banter, good fun. It helps actually open doors. I've had lots of comments about it to make connections, and I know that some people in Teachers Talk Radio have gone on to actual careers connected to even broadcasting and also further in education. So something good in the CV, and actually it's something good fun as well. So if you are interested in joining us, then DMs are open, and come and join the Teachers Talk Radio hive mind. I think we're in 2 years. I think we're just past 2 years now, aren't we, Adam?
Yeah, possibly. It's all been kind of a bit of a kind of blurb, if you say so. That's kind of, because I think we started doing podcasts, and then we kind of went on to extra bits, and now we're kind of obviously which you can see us, which is fantastic. Yeah. I was doing a quick search of the internet kind of the other day. I was talking to my my 2 daughters about kind of bags that we took to school. And do you remember this bag? Because this really kind of took me right back. Obviously, 90s very much in vogue with kids at the minute, and my kids were loving it. They go, that's absolutely fantastic. But literally, I don't know. Virtually,
mine was an Admiral.
Okay,
next level down from Umbro.
Okay,
so I had Admiral, which I think
this might be the English school kind of equivalent, I think.
There were people who had that bag. I mean, it faded quite badly, and it does remind me of the white high-tech boots. Remember those big, giant white high-tech boots? And you used to have the white stuff that you'd have to put on those big white high-tech boots, and mullets. I mean, we all had like the mullet from the kid out of Terminator 2. You know, the spiky hair at the top. What? You didn't have a mullet?
No, I went Jason Donovan, like Wedge.
You went curtains, did you? You were so indie. You went curtains. No, I was so heavy metal, man. I had the whole Iron Maiden, a couple of Eddie t-shirts, the torn jeans. Man, I had the legs like 2 bean poles, the torn jeans, the socks that were white, and the jeans were halfway up. And I had that look, and the ripped, torn, sleeveless. That was me.
It's just interesting. Kind of one thing you see as a teacher, don't you? You see these kind of, especially if you've been in the game for a while, like we have. You kind of see these kind of trends kind of come and go. But I never really thought I'd kind of see the kind of 90. Yeah, that'll be the kind of at the end of our career. Probably that'll be our kids going into teaching at the end, like when they're 40. Their kids.
What was it? Pencil cases. I remember like 10 years ago there was an online influencer thing called Zuella, and I was like, every time I heard that, I was like, everybody's free to feel good. And I'm like, took me back to the 90s. And I remember kids were like paying £25 for a plastic 10 pence Zuella with eyebrows pencil case. But one of the things I've noticed recently, kids don't use pencil cases any longer. Pencil cases gone out of fashion.
To be fair, actually, this year I've been pretty impressed so far. I mean, like as I said, I made a joke about getting to October, but I've been pretty impressed by the classes thus far with equipment. I don't know if it's kind of become with kind of some of the brands on the high street actually selling stationery again. Some of those have become quite fashionable, haven't they? I wonder if it's become like a bit of a fashion thing to actually bring equipment to school, which is kind of ironic because we've had years of scraps of pencils or kind of the betting slip pen kind of come out. Or
I check every morning. I've made it one of my standards checks is pen, pencil, ruler, calculator, reading book. That's my standard. And it's interesting. I had over the last couple of months, I've had students pretend that their eye pencil, what they call one of those coloring pencils for their eyes.
So
that one.
you talk about eyelashes, or
yes. So they tried to pretend that was an actual pencil. And like, great. I had another student who tried to tell me that a marker was a ruler because you could draw a straight line. I'm like, could you show me 10 centimeters on that marker? I've had another one try to use all sorts of makeup as fake pens. And like, let me see that pen. Is that actually a pen? You're like, no, it's not, sir. So I've got used to now like pen, pencil, ruler. And because we've got Blazer, they basically store everything in their Blazer, and
that's essentially what my daughters do. We kind of like on a Friday, we kind of move their Blazers, and the whole kind of world falls out of
the Foxman and Jetsam of the week.
Sprinkles all over the floor. So should we get kind of rocking with our first story? Because I feel like we've got a lot to unpack here. I'm
enjoying this nostalgia. This is good.
Of course, yeah. Maybe we could do a kind of flashback show at some point. You can dress in your kind of 80s school. We could do a school disco, teachers talk radio. And we could wear
the good old school discos. The only way is up.
I mean that's it. I'm emailing Tom as it is to kind of set up a channel for teachers talk radio, school disco.
School disco where the boys sit in one corner, the girls sit in the other corner, and nobody talk to each other.
What's in vogue at the minute to get people's attention? Hands up? Is it a clap to get attention? We need to kind of crack on. We need to crack on. So curriculum review, Brent. We've been kind of asking for it for a while. It's kind of come up on our kind of Venn diagrams a few times, the things that this curriculum review is required, and all of a sudden it's there. The DofE posted on their website, so we can kind of show that what that screen looks like. It's on gov.uk. So they're looking for kind of oh, hello Tom, hope you well. Legends.
I don't know if that background is the right background for Tom. I really don't. He's back up again.
Don't diss him while he's there. Right. So calling for evidence, inviting people to share the following. So if we can put this screen up for everyone to kind of see. The review panel is running a call for evidence, inviting people to share the following. Their ideas for potential improvements to the curriculum and assessment system, what works well in the current system, and details of anything that doesn't. So essentially, we've got a classic teacher feedback of www and an EBI comments going forward. So they're following kind of the classic kind of teacher feedback. So shall we do it tonight? So we give them what works well and basically what doesn't work so well.
Well, my first thing
for the moment
has to be, I'm sick of everything being piled into an overstuffed curriculum. We cannot keep teaching the amount of content. Science, 3 science, and kids are overloaded. And I don't care how many knowledge retrieval tasks you do. There's only so much information you can cram into a child's head at 14 when their brain is being rewired. And if I'm struggling and I'm an educator to keep up with the amount of content, God knows how a child is doing 11, 12 GCSEs, each coming with ridiculous question stems, trying to catch them out. It's just trying to catch them out and feel them. It's tripping up system. It's not getting the best out of our kids. So you have to look, for me, it's all right just doing the curriculum again, but
should we look at our areas of expertise then? So let's say if you looked at geography or history or one of the subjects
in the last couple of years, that's geography, history, physics, English, PHSE, computing, and anything else you want me to do.
Okay, yes. Sorry to kind of scratch that for you, but if we go kind of history, I guess kind of that's what your kind of expertise is with geography. But if you're stripping curriculum, what are you stripping? Are you taking out complete topics? Are you kind of getting away from some of the? Are you thinning out some of that content? Is that the best thing to do, or is it kind of keeping the content, or looking at another way of assessing it? Maybe.
I think you do everything in that because the Govian agenda was all knowledge based and overloaded. Right, that's great. Knowledge base is important to a certain extent, but we live in a world where children can find out knowledge quite quickly. We don't have the breathing space to teach, I think, some of the critical skills. And when you talk about what really is the essence of what I need as a history teacher. It is about discussion, debate. I don't have time to discuss and debate because it's like too much. There's just far too much. I've got 1,000 years. I'm doing a unit at the moment which goes from Magna Carta right up to Stonewall, right up to LGTB, right up to.
But the question is to kind of defend the Govian kind of policy on content. Until you've got the knowledge and you're secure with that knowledge, it's very difficult to build upon that. So that was the kind of the argument, wasn't it? That
completely agree.
Students don't have the knowledge, and although it would be great to say, you know, because I've had this, well, I have this feedback. It seems to be all the feedback I ever get, kind of from lesson reviews and whatever. That could that be better done as like a flip learning experience, whatever. I said that's great, but what do I do when only 5 of them have done it, and 5 of them bring it back into the class? So
I tell you what happens. A lot of children turn around and say, "I'm going to prioritize that subject, because they're overloaded." So what you end up getting by outcome, some children just opting out. You want to talk about attendance? They're just opting out. They're switching off. They're just giving up because the curriculum's just too much for them. I mean, I do this on Thursday nights, and I sit down with the kids and have a cup of tea with them. And they do some revision, have a chat with them, how they're feeling. And part of that is to take the temperature down, take the pressure off, let them know how they're feeling, because it's just too much. It's far too much content. And when we're siloed, you know, this whole competition between subjects, we need to integrate subjects. We need to start integrating subjects and linking them together a lot more. The idea in some schools, subjects are practically in competition. And you get that when they say, you know, well, they could do it in this subject. Why can't they do it in the art? I'll give you an example of that. I teach both concurrently geography and history. My results for both subjects are very widely different. Of course they are, because the competency and skills needed. Now, you tell me why some of my students do better in geography and history, and I will tell you, because they can walk into the exam, they get a graph, and they can work it out. Whereas my historians, they have to know it. They have to really know it, really, really, really know it. It's too academic. And it's too much for some children, especially the working class children who've gotten none of those advantages of cultural capital, who can't go and visit the Globe Theatre. They haven't got the facilities. They haven't got, I don't think, the learning profile to do it. So really what we need to go back to more vocational, less emphasis on every kid writing an essay, less emphasis on terminal exams, measuring the children's actual ability. So the curriculum needs to be fit for purpose for the 21st century and not 1960s grammar schools. Because that's really what it's ended up. It's ended up like 1960s grammar school.
Well, it's certainly looking at that bag, the curriculum definitely hasn't changed since we were at school. I mean, that's kind of almost like a given. The things they're doing are... we had a conversation tonight about home economics. That it was home, like when my wife was at school, that was home. It was home economics, and it was basically split between kind of food and textiles and some other things like sewing, and I think she actually said she did ironing at her school only a few years kind of before us. And then when I went to school, that was home economics brackets food, and then Lila laughed at me and said, that's the same as it is now. I thought that's unbelievable that this thing is still called home economics in 2024. Is phenomenal. Really, it shows how little kind of evolving the curriculum has done, or schools have done to match. And then if you look at the difference between how society shifted in that time, it hasn't changed. The school system almost is paralyzed, isn't it? It's been.
I'll give you an example, and Tom Rogers and obviously the guys that were up at the history conference, I sort of took a risk because I was in a room of people who I respected, people whose textbooks I've been using for years. And my basic play was, why are nobody teaching the Middle East? When you look at what's going on in the world right now, why is none? 555 students in the whole country are doing a module about Iran, Iraq, 9/11, the Gulf War. What are we all teaching? I tell you what they're teaching. They're doing Germany in the interwar years, because in an overpopulated curriculum, they're narrowing the curriculum because they're under pressure to get results. So they're gaming the system, not for the children's benefit. And that's the problem with the curriculum. At the moment, schools are playing games, point scores, bucket, open bucket, closed bucket. Who gives a crap about a bucket? I am sick of hearing about the priority of a school to meet league tables.
Yeah, but this has been tied in. Sorry, Brent, this has also been tied into the Ofsted thing, hasn't it? About basically kind of the idea was from head teacher. I think generally head teachers kind of thought, if I gain the system and I kind of get good results, i.e. then Ofsted leave me alone and I retain my job because the school stays good, outstanding, whatever. So that's the game, isn't it? So we talked about reforming Ofsted, but obviously that plays a part with this because ultimately they're the checkers here, aren't they? They're the people checking kind of.
You are judged by your results as a teacher.
Yes.
And again, to quote Tom again, and that's not fair because they're not our results, they're the students' results. But we're under so much pressure, and this is why I can't blame some teachers for doing that. They're under pressure to get results. They will cut corners in the sense that they will say, right, I'm going to make sure those kids learn less content by doing 2 units which are too similar. So what do you end up getting? Children who go through GCSE history have a narrow, oh, Nazi Germany, Treaty of Versailles. Yay. That's the same thing they were taught. It's the same thing their parents were taught. Instead of actually what they really need in the world going on at the moment. We talk about critical thinking. And the thing is, and I wonder, I could stand up there and teach history lessons, which debate, discuss, all those great things. We do it at Key Stage 3, which really irks me. Key Stage 3, you've got barnstorming, fantastic lessons. You get to Key Stage 4, and it's like, sorry, guys, the fun is over. Grind. And you think
it's a filtering that comes from Key Stage 2, isn't it? So we've talked before about this vastness of kind of the year 4, year 5. SATs kind of kills that off. Year 7, year 8 again widens, and then it gets very narrow towards the top.
I want a curriculum that's fun. I want a curriculum that I want to teach as a teacher where I can have fun. I mean, maybe that's a dirty word in education. I mean, what is wrong in having a little fun in education? And you take the school trips, the coursework, geography, for instance. One of the most exciting things about when I was doing geography when I was a kid, I had a kid the other day, and I've kept two items from my GCSEs. One is a big giant. I'm going to bring it on one teacher talk radio. A big giant sculpted head. This thing freaky. It looks like something out of what's that, Predator? Basically, I was in a dark place when I was a kid, and I produced this big giant head. And I brought it into school about 10 years ago when we were doing our masters, and we were talking about motivation. I wanted to share the idea of how do we motivate kids? What motivated me as a kid was art. I went into the art room. I loved my art teacher. And I intrinsically just enjoyed doing pottery. Coming home to man, there's an ashtray, and she still got it. And it's the ugliest darn thing in history. That's my ashtray. I made that. I used to love going down to the DT room, and the DT guys would lay out the DT room. And you used to have this in your school as well, because it was a DT specialist. And the kids would make chairs, they'd make this, they'd make that. And you go, wow, look at that chair, look at this. And it's like, yeah, and then tick the box. Where is the intrinsic fun? And where's the literal joy in subjects? It's been knocked out of our children.
Yeah. Bizarrely, that type of thing that you talk about only really happens now in smaller groups where where the school has decided to do some kind of alternative curriculum because they know basically those children cannot do the GCSE for whatever reason, and then you actually see loads of innovation and loads of great teaching and loads of fun lessons. Bizarrely,
and tell me why some parents are saying their child's going to be homeschooled because they're doing forest schools, they're doing arts and crafts, they're doing all this stuff. I've got friends who homeschool their children. They've got their own curriculum and they network together, intelligent people, and they're saying, I want my child to be creative. I want my child to have this experience. And I keep seeing on their social media posts, they're out at museums, they're out doing these enrichment activities. And here's me stuck in a classroom going, retrieval task. Oh, we've got to get this done. Too much information. Look, I've got this done. Stress. For God's sake. What are we doing to these kids at 14, 15, 16 years old? We're overloading them. And then you see the exam stress kicking in. They don't think they're good enough. We get under stress and we pass it down to the kids. It's not just curriculum. It's the whole modus operandi of what the purpose of education is. And that's the wrong thing that they think if they're going to skirt around a curriculum. Because for me, skirting around curriculum is just we've done it, tick the box. I think this is just cynically me kicking in. It's another tick boxing exercise. We've done a new curriculum.
So you're saying actually we need to think higher and we need to think of a set of values that's going to hold curriculum together for the next whatever number of years. So almost like business would do like a strategic plan and say, what is the vision for the next 5 to 10 years? And then kind of build the curriculum under it. Because without that, all we're going to do is basically kind of decide that home economics is going to be called food and, business studies is going to be called enterprise.
I lament one of the curriculum changes that the previous government made when I was the head of citizenship. I actually thought citizenship was a really good subject. And I spent a lot of my life force and time doing international schools, democracy, voting, big society. And funny, the next government came in, Dave Cameron's government. I thought, oh, great, he's talking about big society. Surely you'd want to keep, you'd want to keep that. No, because it was a Labour initiative, they didn't touch it. So no disrespect to the last governments. They politicize education for their own ends. They need to stop doing that. That they need to do what is right for our children, not right for headlines, league tables, and scoring points against each other. Under us, our government, education improved. Here's some statistics that are completely massaged and false. Stop it. Stop it. Our children's futures are far too valuable. They only get one shot at their education. And I'm sick and tired of them being one experiment from one non-specialist to an unknown specialist education minister. Let's get the experts involved. Let's get teachers like ourselves involved. Let's listen. And this is the thing. It's not going to be an exercise in tick boxing going. They've got to listen to us professionals. And one of the reasons, and even the kids themselves, I'm going to say, kids and parents, what curriculum do they want? And I know you say, well, okay, kids don't want this, that age, they can't make a judgment. We chose our options, and I didn't regret choosing my options at 13, 14, 15. Kids know what they like. So why don't give them some advocacy? Why not give them a little bit of control? Why not give them a little bit of kind of responsibility? You take that subject, you choose that subject. Guess what happens? You get more motivated when you're more buying into it rather than have it done to you.
Well, just a call from the kind of the government, what DV are asking for. They're asking for quite a range of stakeholders to kind of participate in this. They want students, which is good, I think. Pupils and learners. Okay, that's one of those like masters things that we did. What's the difference between a student, pupil, and learner? It's funny how they're like 3 different categories. Parents and carers, teachers, tutors and lecturers, head teachers and senior leadership, wider school, college, university workforce, researchers, academics, educational experts, employers, good, obviously because they obviously get sidetracked sometimes, local authority officers. Okay, that's interesting.
Are there any left?
that's interesting shout out. The one person that's left in a council house somewhere.
The guy sitting in himself in a cracked window going, this used to be the local authority.
That's me.
And I'm now cutting the grass for no moment.
Yeah, and obviously kind of at the bottom, anyone interested. They said that this is not a consultation and we are not seeking views on specific recommendations at this stage. This is a call for evidence. So I think you've got a recommendation there, Brent, from JBL, Billy Collins, the lanyard.
Yeah, it's brilliant. But what you just said about the clay ashtray, but for him it was a lanyard made at summer camp. You're absolutely, it's that connection to your learning,
yes,
and that connection to your learning that I think lives you beyond. I took out, I meant to finish that. I had a student around and say to me, oh, it's really hard to do all these things. What was it like when you were at school? And in my cupboard, which I've cleaned out, I have my old GCSE coursework, which was handwritten. And I took it out and put it in front of this kid. And he went, why have you kept that? I said, I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it. It's 126 pages long. But what did I do? I went up to the Mourne Mountains and I basically measured the bank full width, the bank full depth. I can tell you now, 30 odd years later, exactly what I did, because I did that. It was my coursework. My teacher helped me facilitate it, but I got into the river. I measured it. I went to an outdoor pursuit center. It was one of the greatest educational experiences. I would go so far as to say that probably encouraged me to do A-level geography. And probably was back in my mind thinking, gosh, I can look at the world and see the world. I made connection what I was learning at school to what I was learning in the outside world. Yeah. And part of that was the experience of going out and doing field work. Honest to goodness field work. Does that happen any longer? No, we have a field work paper in geography, which is fake, because you go out and you do a fieldwork study theoretically, but you don't do the coursework. You don't sit down any longer.
You've got to live your subject, aren't you? But I do think I'll hold you on to that quote there. I think that'll be a great line for a country and western song. I got into the river. I can see that kind of being merged into kind of a country and western song. The government is saying that they want the review to ensure the curriculum appropriately balances ambition, excellence, relevance, flexibility, and inclusivity for all children and young people. It does want to kind of obviously build on excellent foundations of core subjects, reading, writing, and maths. But they're also keen to kind of bring in the broader curriculum. And I think this is really valuable now, is that there seems to be a real push for the government to make sure that music, art, sport, and drama are really integrally kind of playing that, because that and I think we've kind of discussed that a few times of the importance of drama, art, and music, just in terms of how the brain works, and giving that kind of space for the neurological connections to. There's loads of evidence out there about music, drama, and the expressive arts.
Variety.
Yeah,
I think we need the variety as well. You know yourself, when children are taking the options with me and they turn around and say, parents, I always have the discussion with parents, and they go, well, I want my child to take STEM subjects. And we had Dr. Benison on recently in one of our shows. Yeah. He was saying that the number of students taking maths at A level is increased because the maths get you a job. But the unsatisfaction, a number of people dropping out because they're just not, they're there because they have to be there. They're not there because they want to be there. And that's the difference. We want learners who want to buy into learning, because part of what school is doing is we're not the complete and utter overhaul for these children. We're our stage in their development. Part of our job is to get them to be able to teach themselves, to teach the learner. And I think we've lost that because there's so much emphasis on what we do. There's less emphasis on the children. It's got to be about them. It's got to be about their development. And schools are just obsessed with their own selves. Schools will become selfish, forced to be selfish because they're competing with each other. And that's what you've seen some of the curriculum. Some of the curriculum has been set up not for the benefit of the students, but the benefit of the trusts, benefit of other people, benefit of a head of department. And I think we've lost sight of who we're actually teaching and why we're teaching it for. And I think that rationale, when somebody says to me, why are you teaching this in history? I always will have, I know why I'm teaching what I'm teaching. And we're asked that, aren't we? When Ofsted come in, they say, well, please tell me your rationale for why you're teaching that. Yeah. I would ask the government, what is their rationale behind this curriculum? It's got to start with that key point. We want a curriculum for the modern world, for our happier, more productive children that will get them back into school and will be make them more employable, make them more well-rounded, and also in the future world we can see that they will be able to 30 years down the line remember their lessons the way that I remember mine.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we've kind of the starting point's gone, hasn't it? The gun's gone. We've actually got a QR code that we can put up on the screen that for anyone that does want to contribute towards that review. Obviously, you remember there's a broad range of stakeholders, so please share with relevant people if you think they'll be kind of helpful with that. Particularly sometimes kind of smaller entrepreneurs that kind of. Sometimes I meet guys down the pub all the time and they kind of know I'm a teacher and they say, oh, God, I wish students could do this. Well, this could be an opportunity for them to have their say as well without kind of, holding a meeting or getting involved in a conference and stuff to kind of say what maybe smaller businesses want to, 5 million people are basically run small businesses that only employ a few people in this country. Let's hear from their view as well. Let's not hear just from the big corporations. And let's see what kind of these people do that probably employ one or two of our students every so often into their businesses. Their opinions would be really valid as well. So you've got until the 22nd of November this year to kind of log your thoughts. But I'm sure the X and other platforms, people will be sharing their thoughts kind of as they go. So we're going to roll on to our second story, but before we do that, we're just going to hear from our sponsors.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. John Catt have an exceptional collection of book titles that cover a range of educational topics, ideas and research. The books are aimed at forward-thinking schools and support best practice teaching for both primary and secondary education. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order.
Introducing Reading Solutions UK, home to Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development programme improving outcomes for students and schools nationwide. Create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE, using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a personalised learning pathway, built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try the program with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot today.
Superb. Thank you very much for your support. So a second story that obviously you flagged up. Oh, we just got a kind of a comment there, so let's read out. Teenagers sick of lame teaching that doesn't excite. It doesn't even excite the teachers. But when the Secretary of State last listened to a passionate teacher at the chalk face, well, let's give them their dues. You know, we've got to kind of take it at face value. But I appreciate the comments. And I'm going to take this opportunity while Brent's on mute to talk. So if Brent can be unmuted, you might be talking. Who knows? But he kind of, maybe we'll both do it. I'll just freak Lucy out if we both did it. So it's a story that you kind of you flagged up earlier today about teaching assistants, Brent, and that 3 in 4 heads are struggling to recruit teaching assistants, with most secondary and special schools leaders anticipating needing more to cope with rising SEND demand. So this is obviously a big problem because, as I said, these are the people that kind of, you know, we can just about survive at the minute as teachers with these kind of incredible people who step up to be teaching assistants to come into our classrooms, support people with sometimes very extreme and challenging needs.
Yeah, I mean, I've always championed teaching assistants, and I suppose it's the way I was brought up. You know, in our school, my caretaker, cleaners, all those people, I knew every one of them by name. Doesn't mean that the girls in the canteen do give me extra portions. That's how I view my school as a community. And our TAs, some of them are way beyond the scope of what a teaching assistant is. And I would just read you what the government says. And it says that from the findings of their research the government have done at that document, which we'll share, it says the findings indicate the roles and responsibilities of TAs have increased in recent years. They perform a variety of tasks, support teaching and learning in addition to what might be thought of as traditional activities, such as maintaining classroom spaces and preparing resources. This frequently includes whole class, one-to-one, small group support delivered both in and out of the classroom and pupils identified with SEND. And we've also seen, which they haven't admitted, which the unions have flagged up, TAs stepping in and basically delivering lessons because of the recruitment and retention crisis. And there's definitely that happening a lot more. But as one of my long-standing TAs said to me recently, why am I doing this job any longer? I get less thanks. I get more parents emailing in. I get less support. I'm asked to do more. And my son, who's 17, is getting more pay than I am. And he's working at a local supermarket. I've, over the 20 odd years I've been teaching, I've seen some of my TAs develop into fantastic teachers. It's always been a sort of route that some have taken. And I think, again, with the recruitment retention crisis in teaching, that stream of people who go from TAs into teaching, and some do fantastically well as teachers who are former TAs, because you think about what they're asked to do, they see on a ground level exactly what goes on in the classroom. And I always say to myself as an early younger teacher, the 2 groups of people I often asked about reflecting on my teaching practice was my teaching assistants, who see all the lessons, don't they? They go into different lessons, they see different styles. And I would always ask them honestly, how am I doing? How are my lessons? Is there anything I can improve upon? And they always felt, well, I can't question you or the teacher. No, tell me. And sometimes out of the teaching assistant feedback came the best feedback I ever got, because they talk to the children in ways one-to-one. And I know that during COVID, they suffered more during COVID because they were front-facing. They were sitting with the children more in contact while teachers were behind a desk. So again, that's probably not helped with the recruitment and retention, that they were, I think, thrown in too often to the deep end with little sort of protection whatsoever and still asked to do a job. And then when you add in how our children returned from COVID, I think they have been front and center, much like the nurses. I think our TAs, if you're equivalent of we're the doctors, our TAs are the nurses. In that sort of analogy, I think we cannot function without them any longer, because
I mean, the basics are. I mean, we were asking these people to kind of do a very challenging job, but what was an average about 15 grand a year? Is that kind of what you're kind of hearing? I mean, that's incredibly low, isn't it? I mean, that's lower than you'd expect someone to be doing bar work, for example.
Some actually, some teacher assistants I know do second and third jobs.
So again, that their resource is even more stressed by the fact that they've got to do kind of second, third, and fourth jobs. And these are the people who are basically there to support, and they will be. There'll be kind of all things that we've said. There'll be many kind of psychiatrists. There'll be many kind of experts in their particular discipline around, dyslexia or, autism or whatever. They'll have these kind of specialisms within it. I mean, I'm working with a fantastic team at the minute with like BSL and sign and stuff, because we've got teaching a student with hearing impairments. And just being in that world, they've got to be an expert in the language. They've got to be able to, type up what I'm saying, at breakneck speeds. There's a skill there. They've got to then kind of explain it to the student in BSL. It's incredibly kind of far-ranging kind of skill. And then as a country, we're saying we're remunerating that with 15 grand. It's ridiculous.
It is. I mean, there's some facts and figures. I just want to read through some of the actual statistics on this, which are absolutely damning. And I'm gonna criticize actually the unions on this, because I'm actually going to criticize my own union. And I've had this conversation with union leadership, because as a union rep, I have support staff as in my union, but my union's not part of the negotiating team. So I'm just going to say to the unions negotiating at the moment, the teaching assistants pay, hurry up, get on with it. And maybe you should reach out to the likes of the other teaching unions which have got support staff and invite them into the pay situation, because I think it's not fair that teachers are getting the 5.5. I think there has to be a massive uplift in teaching assistant pay, because I think the morality of it sticks with me when I know what the job my teaching assistants do for the pay. And it's not that my teaching assistants are greedy. They're not that type of people. They're altruistic. They care. And my God, they really care about some of these children. They make fantastic relationships and connections with both parents and the children that they teach. And the well of compassion, the intensity of a TA as well is really tough. And okay, they don't have the marking and all the rest of the stuff, but they are on 24s. When they're in that classroom, they're in that classroom. There's no time for it. And they do, I think, go well beyond their actual, I suppose, mission creep. And the way that you said is true with us teachers. But 21% of parents reported a shortage of SEND in April 24, according to the NEU. 9% of teachings have say that they have only got sufficient teaching assistant report. The NEU survey said only 9% of teachers reported they have sufficient teaching assistant report. So that's saying 91% of NEU are reporting that they don't have adequate teaching assistant support. Quarter of parents noted a lack of TA support in their child, and adds further evidence to GMB's findings in March 24. They said 1 in 5 teaching assistant roles in local authority maintained schools were currently unfilled. So there's your recruitment problem. Despite the shortage, school dash data in March 24 shows an increase in demand in TAs. And get this is the squeeze. 158% rise in secondary school teaching assistant applications, which mirrors the increased demand in SEND, and 153% rise in secondary SEND jobs as well. So you have an increase in SEND, a decrease in recruitment, a decrease in teaching assistants. So there's a definite squeezing there, isn't it? That then puts this pressure on us. And it's kind of a symbiotic situation of teachers are now having to cope without teaching assistants, parents getting frustrated. That erodes the relationship with some schools. And I think that leads to more complaints, it leads to more stress, which I think connects to the teacher recruitment issue. So I think there is a definite symbiosis between the teacher recruitment problems and the TA recruitment problems as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really interesting that maybe this is one of the things we can pick up next week, because we're going to be talking back about kind of COVID and the legacy of COVID on schools. But part of this problem is that there was the COVID recovery money, that obviously was that, which I didn't know, was largely there propping this system up with TA pay, that now has come to an end. And obviously that's where literally the kind of bottom's fallen out of that market, hasn't it? To there's no money available anymore to pay for it. I mean, it'd be really interesting. There's two things to watch kind of coming up. One, does this factor into the budget in a couple of weeks' time? Nothing's been said about kind of funding for schools, particularly apart from the 6,000 extra teachers. We don't really know kind of where that money's coming from. And are we going? I know the Department of Education look at certain things around COVID, particularly kind of giving like a call's gone out today because of maths. They're thinking about kind of going back to the maths sheets again and giving some kind of assistance and exams for maths and other subjects going forward. But it does seem that this kind of like legacy of COVID, obviously some of these issues will be health issues related to COVID. But some of them, obviously, we now know that, there's a lot more kind of a social trend for people to understand their own kind of learning needs. So they are coming into school. And as far as I'm aware, there's a legal requirement for a school to, deal with that learning need whilst it's in the school. So with kind of with adding no money into it, and TAs kind of, I guess, getting disaffected and leaving because, eventually that's, however good someone is, 15 grand a year, isn't going to pay for your increase in mortgage, your energy bills, however much you love the job. Eventually you're just going to run out of the pennies, aren't you, to do the job. So there needs to be I'm glad you kind of pulled up the unions there, because I haven't heard anything there really on pay directly about TAs.
I mean, that was from Daniel Kebedy himself when I spoke to him at a conference, and he was like, yes, we'd like to represent, because I have had more teaching assistants join my union at any other time, because I'm going to be honest, the spurious complaint nature and the vulnerability of staff is now extending to teaching assistants as well. And I've noticed a pattern developing where some parents
they're in the firing line, essentially, aren't they? More
they are more in the firing line in some aspects, because they are the person who is, read the CHP. They are, I think, again, following some of the children around with SEND, and if it doesn't work, they're trying to facilitate, trying to meet the needs of that child, and sometimes they can't meet the needs. I mean, here's one example: 27% of parents reported a shortage of unqualified teachers in the classroom. TA workload is negatively impacted by that, but also Unison survey revealed that 25% of primary TAs had been asked to provide class cover due to not enough teachers. So some primary TAs are stepping in and delivering lessons. That is a no-no. That is not fair. And that leads to this idea of unqualified. And again, hard up schools with staffing problems are trying to put in teaching assistants who are on peanuts as basically surrogate teachers.
So if I was a teaching assistant and the head teachers come to me and said, we'd like you to cover this class, what is it I'm saying?
No.
Just saying. I mean, like this.
No, for two reasons. Number one, that's putting them in a compromised situation. They're not a specialist. They're not a trained teacher. They're a trained teacher and they're a TA, and they're possibly, they're somebody who's comfortable with doing that. Then that's up to the individual. But I would advise not. No chance. Because there's the other second side of that is, right, hard up trusts want to save money. Well, fine, they can just cut a job and have a surrogate cheap teacher there. I'm sorry. That is, for me, has to be a red line. It's not fair on the teaching assistant. It's not fair on the children. And it is a deprofessionalization of our profession. And I think that would be, in an emergency situation, I can understand that some hard up head teacher might do that. But that's a slippery slope. And that is a slippery, slippery slope. I don't think we should ever put somebody in that situation. And I think, no, I would advise any teaching assistant who's been in that situation that you join a union and say that your union, that is not your job. You are not a teacher. You're a teaching assistant. Okay, you wouldn't ask a nurse to be a doctor's job.
Okay, so should they then be doing kind of admin jobs within the school? I mean,
within reason, if it's fair. I mean, again, in primary schools, TAs do a lot more of the display stuff. Again, that's what the government's saying is it has, teaching assistants are now doing a multi-variety of jobs. I would say it's a context is always important. A context of a school is always important. The needs of the school is always important. But I would say that one of the things that's overlooked is actually teaching assistant contracts, and teaching assistant contracts of what kind of contract they're on. Again, the unqualified teacher status. I've had some TAs who ended up as unqualified teacher status, and you're thinking, right, whoa, how much are you getting paid? I think, how do I say this sort of without getting myself into trouble? I think teaching assistants have been taken advantage of because I think their altruism, the same as some teachers have, and I think because they are good-natured people who want to help children, I think that good nature is being used against them in the same way that our good nature is being used against. And I'd say that creepage has reached a point where it's broken some people and forced them out of being a teaching assistant because it's not fair. They're not being treated right. They're not.
It goes on from the article we kind of had up. We had the article talked about kind of preschool break and lunch tutors TAs are kind of doing. They're also delivering one-to-ones, and I think fair enough. Intervention, creating kind of resources, sorting out classroom displays and materials, as well as kind of. But I mean, it does say that some of them are getting paid a kind of overtime or some kind of remuneration for it. But I think there's a kind of as you said, it's a kind of slippery slope into, well, this person now is just a general kind of person.
Dog's body.
That can be used. Well, that can be used. It can be used as and when the kind of school feels there's a kind of need within it, rather than it being. Actually, I think what we need the TA bit itself almost to be a bit like a qualified profession in itself, doesn't it? Because that would give it some status.
Yeah.
And that would give some confidence with TAs to say, actually, no, I am a qualified TA. I am not somebody that's going to step in and do half an hour's worth of stapling for a teacher who's just kind of not done it.
I've had my life TA, in particular, it was a history TA, and this was just amazing. She had a philosophy degree. And I used to always joke her and say, well, be a teacher. And she's like, I can't control children. I'm fine. But for my money, Liz was attached to our department. We used to have a TA attached to our department. And she became obviously a specialist then in humanities. And literally, we bounced off each other as a team. We were a team. And she wasn't a teaching assistant that everybody would have liked because she was basically like me. She was, energetic. Let's just say energetic. So the two of us together was brilliant because it's just energy. And not everybody liked that. Science, no chance, because that science is. So sometimes it is about matching the right teaching assistant, the right teacher, and that chemistry can be really, really important. Where I could turn around and trust Liz and say, right, you know what, here you go. Here's a couple of historians. Here's a couple of children. She built those relationships. I'm going to be honest with you. She was worth a grade. All the work she did, and some of my there's one student in particular was predicted back when it was A, B, C, D, was predicted a D. He ended up with an A grade. I'm not kidding you. The work that she did with that boy was just amazing. And literally, still to this day, when I see him out and about, he's like, I got an A in history, sir. And I'm thinking, yeah, you got an A in history because you had that one-to-one from a teaching assistant who knew the curriculum and was well overqualified. And I don't know if we have that level of time quality because they're being pulled left, right, and center into jobs again, like us teachers. I think, like us teachers, they're being spread too thin.
Well, should we just put up, because we've had a comment from kind of one of our friends at Teacher Talk Radio, Paul Foz. I think he's kind of promoting something else there with his kind of logo. It's essentially kind of the thought is that kind of, well, TAs, teachers, secretaries, the din lady, everybody does a little bit of something else. Is that a thing? Is that just something we have to accept now? I know. I get what you're saying, Paul. It's not going to work if everyone just did their own. If I just went in and just taught my business studies lessons, the whole thing would kind of fall apart. I get that bit, but is there a line that's being crossed here? Where actually kind of the good-naturedness of a TA and their want to kind of be in a school and really help people, is that being kind of pushed into things that really there should be either a remuneration or a status linked to it because of what they're doing? Should it be rewarded in some way? Essentially, is what I'm saying.
Honestly, there are more bureaucratic people in education, and we are mirroring the NHS. We have more middle managers, more bureaucracy, more accountants, more PR, more HR, more people making money out of education, and less teaching assistants. And that, for me, is it. We need more bodies in the classroom. You talk about an army of teaching assistants. I'd love to have an army of teaching assistants. We don't, because we don't have an army of teachers. There's a scant army. What's left of an army is basically Dad's army at the moment. We might as well have Captain Mainwaring going in there, because we are running out of quality teaching assistants. And I'm going to say something now. Don't mute me. Supply agencies. No, I'm really sorry, but supply agency teaching assistants, no disrespect, they don't have the same quality as somebody who's been in education in a school. A lot of teaching assistants stay in an education setting for more than longer than some of the teachers. I know some of my teaching assistant colleagues are there longer than I am. I'm 21 years, and they are part of a community. And I think this is connected to the way schools aren't connected to communities any longer, because some of those teaching assistants are there because their children went to that school.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's an important thing to mention, isn't it? That these people are really invested stakeholders, aren't they?
They are.
They are people that literally, they leave, they walk out the school gate, possibly with one of their children who are at the school, and then walk kind of 50 yards down the road. They're such an integral part, where sometimes it's true that maybe teachers do kind of come in and out of an area.
Well, there's a mercenary aspect of teaching which is starting to happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
You sort of like, you come in, you're a teacher, you're there. But as I say, it worked for me when I had a teaching assistant for a few years, and they got to know me, I got to know them, they got to know the kids, they got to know the parents. For me, the key thing in education is relationships. You can't build relationships with a supply teaching assistant who doesn't even know the kids, doesn't even know the area. I'm sorry, they are creaming off the profits in education, and there's far too much bureaucracy, supply agencies, there's just money going out the door in education, and I don't know where it's going, but it ain't going into the classroom, it ain't going into the wages of teaching assistants, and it's not going into our wages. We need bodies in the classroom. Simple as that. We need bodies, quality bodies.
Let's call that, because I think that's a perfect kind of quote to end things on tonight. It's a fantastic kind of conversation, and I think it's definitely one to kind of bring up. But thanks for listening tonight. We've been sponsored by John Katz Education, publisher of professional books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore a full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. And we're also grateful to the support of Reading Solutions UK. It's the home of the Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development program. Create strong readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gap and places them on a personalised learning pathway built to accelerate their strengths and improve their areas for development. You can try the program with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot. So thank you very much for all their support, and you can see their information come across the bottom. Next week, as I said, we're joined by Steve B, who's going to we're going to look at the legacy of COVID. And so I know it's something we've kind of touched on a few times. Kind of, we're 6 years, nearly 6 years on, are we? 5 years on from kind of 4.5, 5 years from kind of that first kind of outbreak. So it'd be interesting to kind of just step back and have a look at that. So if we could show his face on the screen, that'd be great, so people can see who Steve is.
Hello, Steve.
Hello, Steve. Steve's not coming on. And also you can.
Could you explain who Steve is then? If people can't see. So could you explain what Steve's connection to COVID?
I think we'll do that. We'll do that next. We've got just a quick quote. Yeah, because we've got 1 second left. We've got a quick quote there. That's JBL says, worked with a TA who was far better than me in dealing with challenging boys who saw as a mum figure. Absolutely. I was thinking that when Brent was talking. There's been so many TAs that I've been kind of scared of in the classroom sometimes, which has been kind of fantastic. Obviously, you can go to thank you, JBL, for all your comments, and Paul Foz as well for commenting on tonight. You can go to thanks, Paul. Thank you very much. We take feedback whenever we can. Thank you very much. And we also, you can go on to kind of the YouTube, go on to Teacher Talk Radio channel, and you can see all our previous shows.
Join us.
And come and join us. T-shirt and a mug. And we didn't get a chance to discuss your rather disappointing.
Oh, no, we will. No, we're just going to finish with that. So one of the problems of budget.
We're done. We 2, 3, 2, 1.
No, we do not. I'm discussing this. This is happening. So there I am, organized, got myself a new classroom.
Sorry, guys, I'm trying to cut it now.
8 glue sticks. No, I'm doing this. 8 glue sticks. I put in little boxes, and it's great. And I'm thinking, I've got all my retrieval tasks. I'm on this year. I'm going to make my life a lot easier, get organized. Whoa. And kids come to me the other day, sir, the glues don't work. And I'm like, what do you mean the glues don't work? And they pretty much were putting the glues, and they were just falling out. They were mush. So the quote line for this is, I long for the day when I have a semi-hard Pritt stick as opposed to a rather flaccid, completely floppy glue stick, which is cheap and nasty. If anybody is the manufacturer of proper glue sticks at a reasonable price, I'm more than willing to, as long as they are not going to. I'm serious. It was just like kids having to go to the toilet to wash their hands. These glue sticks melted.
Brent, you've had your carry on moment. Good night.
Glue sticks. We need them.
Good night.
Proper ones.
Good night.
Proper.
Full of outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused